Okay, so here you can see I've removed the Cyclone from the vacuum cleaner. For now, just ignore these other fittings that are attached. The first thing is that you'll get this Cyclone and you'll get your bucket. So you're going to have to screw your Cyclone to the bucket lid. So you're going to have to get your lid, just turn this over. You're going to have to get your lid, and with the Cyclone comes this little template, this little paper template. So what I did is I just glued that template onto the lid, and then using the jigsaw I cut out the hole for the Cyclone. And the Cyclone needs to come through the lid. Now with the newer model of the Cyclone, by the way, the Cyclones, you can buy this Cyclone, I'm not sure where you can buy them in the USA, but in Australia you can buy them on eBay from China, and in New Zealand you can buy them from Trade Me. And I'm sure they come from the same place. The thing to know is that there is an older model and there's a newer model. The older model has square shoulders, so the tube comes in here pretty, and it's not on such an angle as this, it's flatter, and it has a square top. Also, underneath is square or perpendicular, whereas if you look closely here, you can see here the bottom is not perpendicular, it comes out further on one end than another, so it's a slight angle. Yeah, and so what this does is by coming around here and spiraling down, it works better in terms of creating that vortex that we want. So go for the newer model when you buy it. Then you'll need to attach it to your lid. Now my lid, I just grabbed a 20-litre plastic lid from the big box store, but then I found it wasn't really strong enough. So I did two things to strengthen it up. One is I had a bit of hardboard or masonite lying around the workshop, so I cut that out, and then I actually used epoxy glue to epoxy that onto the lid to strengthen it up. I also had a bit of clear plastic lying around, so I also cut a piece of clear plastic and glued that to the other side of the lid. So that made my lid a lot more rigid, a lot stronger. Then I glued this template on to the lid using the jigsaw, or a drill in the jigsaw, to cut out this hole, drilled through some holes here, and then screwed. I can't remember if these screws came with the Cyclone or not. I don't think they did, but I can't remember, to be honest. Hopefully they did, because you need ones to be the right length, not too long, to come up and screw into the Cyclone, and holds it all together fairly rigidly. Okay, so you'll need to do that. We'll come and we'll talk about these fittings, because you may use different fittings. This was what I came up with. Yeah, at the top here, I think from memory this has a 50mm, might even be 65mm wide part here, and I'm struggling to get this part off now. But in here there is a reducer, but I found that the reducer still was not the right. It didn't give me a way to attach my, I think it's 38mm hose from the vacuum cleaner. So the only thing that I could find quickly was this plumbing fitting, which is not the most elegant or cheapest solution, but it does work it's quite effective. So that's what I grabbed for that. There's probably a better way to do that, a cheaper way to do that, because I can't remember what I paid for this, but it wasn't the cheapest way to go. So hopefully you can find something that you'll notice this green here. This is this special cement for gluing high pressure PVC pipe. Now you want to use as much as possible, you want to use smooth pipe, and you want to try and avoid rectangles as well. If you use the ribbed flexible pipe, it reduces the airflow quite considerably, whereas if you've got smooth pipe, obviously the air just flows straight through it. So that's the reason to try and find some plumbing fittings that allow you to have smooth pipe and smooth airflow right through, and try and avoid right angles. If you have to do a right angle, do it 45 and then another 45, so that you have a more of a gentle bend. You'll see in my design I ended up with a small piece of the ribbed flexi hose anyway, but try and avoid that. I had a bit of trouble trying to figure out how I'm going to keep this thing fairly rigid, because what will happen, what I knew would happen, is once I attached a hose here, I'd start pulling the cart around by the hose, although I shouldn't really, should grab the cart by the cart. But the reality is you always end up pulling it a little bit by the hose. So I've come up with this little kind of solution where I've got this is being I cut these two pieces of wood, and then I've cut a female socket for it in the cart. And what this means is that this slots into the socket. I'll just bring it around to the cart and show you. So these two pieces of wood that are on the Cyclone, they slot down into this socket on the cart, and the piece of wood at the back, that stops the forward motion. So if I do pull the cart by the hose, this piece of wood is pulling on the cart, so that the weight, the force is transferred to the cart. I don't want the force to be, I don't want the connection between the Cyclone and the lid to be trying to resist that force, because it'll just break. Okay, so then this other piece of wood here, that slots into this here, so that keeps it, that transfers the lateral movement if I'm pulling it by this hose, which I probably shouldn't do, but if I ever pull it by that hose, any lateral forces are transferred to that cart. But you can see here, there's nothing to stop me lifting it up, which means that I can lift the lid off the bucket to change the bucket. Yeah, so that's just a little solution I came up with. Yeah, and that actually wedges in there quite tightly, so that's actually in there quite firmly. So I'm not sure if you can see that in the video, but if I do pull it by this, the forces gets transferred. There's no real slop. That's actually wedged in there quite well, and so the forces get transferred to the cart, and not to this join between the Cyclone and the lid.